Hey, kid, just do your best. It's a message that I was raised with, that we were all taught is a message that we should say to children and youth. And indeed, most youth should hear this message. Just do your best. What does that mean? It means you don't have to get A's and you don't have to be the best in the class. You just do your best, right? And that's a great message for many, many, in fact, the majority of people. But my name is Elaine Friend, and I'm here to talk to you about sensitive youth. Sensitive youth get raised with the same messages. I raised my child this way, and this is what we were taught. So there's nothing wrong. If you're a parent and you're checking this out, please, please, please know that we do our best. See, get that play on words there? But when we tell sensitive youth, and I want you to think back on your own childhood if you're an adult seeing this message, what does it mean when you're highly sensitive and someone tells you to just do your best? It's a kind of scary thing, because with the thinking, the noticing, and the strong feeling brains that we have, the more reactive brains, literally the functional MRI studies show us that we have more reactive brains. When we're told to do our best, it is a recipe for perfectionism. It is actually a toxic phrase to raise sensitive children and sensitive youth hearing. So instead of, hey, kid, just do your best, and acknowledge that, you know what, a sensitive person's best is unachievable. The amount of ideas I have, the strong feelings I have, and the things I notice, the minute details. Maybe that's the kind of noticing, minutely noticing. When I was writing the description for this, I thought, oh, what kind of noticing is it that we're doing, we people with sensitive, highly sensitive reactive brains? It is very detailed. So if you're noticing and thinking and feeling so much more than the other people, you're never going to be able to achieve your best. It's a lesson in futility. Now, if you know a highly sensitive youth, you know that they experience that intense futility, that feeling of they're never going to get it. It will never be good enough. That thinking that they're doing in school when the teacher asks a question to answer, and they're thinking so many different possible responses that they can't decide the right one or the best one because they have so many ideas in their mind. Or maybe it's this story, the adolescent secondary school sensitive youth. And I'm going to talk to you youth now on an exam, especially a standardized exam like the SAT or the ACT. Do you know that those exams are written in such a way that you are supposed to give the answer that the test makers want, not necessarily the best answer? The amount of thinking that a sensitive reactive brain does causes them to notice that there are two possible answers to many questions. So if you're worried about doing your best, you could spend 20 minutes on one question. I know I have. So what do we do instead? If just do your best is toxic for a sensitive youth, it raises a perfectionist. And I know I was raised to be a perfectionist, and I most inadvertently, with my full loving heart, I was such a conscientious, and continue to be to this day, a very conscientious, caring, thoughtful, educating myself mother. I mean, heck, I'm a family therapist. Still, I raised a perfectionist, and still I said, just do your best. It wasn't until recently that I realized what a trap this is. In fact, I saw somebody post on Instagram on a parenting page that they were telling their child to just do their best, and it got me thinking. And that's how I realized that it is the key to all of my perfectionism, is that I'm always trying to do my best. Okay, so what if you're not doing your best? You know it's not your best. In fact, you might know a sensitive youth or be one who is just really not even applying themselves to a certain thing. Listen, there's always a reason that a sensitive person is not doing their best. A highly sensitive youth or a highly sensitive person, a highly sensitive child. It usually has to do with overwhelm or self-doubt or self-recrimination. Maybe it just feels too hard, and so they just back off and give up. That would be me with tennis as a child. I knew I could never do my best or be the best. My little sister, you know how that is, it was so much better than me. And so it made me shy away from it because I thought so many different possibilities about how I could do better. So this will happen often with sensitive youth. So what do we do about it? Those hard things. We all have to do hard things, but we need to offer our sensitive youth a safe landing space, a nice, soft place to land, and also an interested and curious ear about why things are hard. We just had our parenting sensitivity circle this morning, and as always, the sensitivity circles, when I get to be in a circle of, say, 6 or 8 other highly sensitive people sharing the journey together, I feel so inspired by all the things that they bring to the circle. And this was a big one today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how just do your best. While it is toxic for sensitive youth, we do have to support them with the hard tasks because much of the world is hard. When you grow up as a highly sensitive person, you're growing up in a world that was designed by and for those who are not highly sensitive, those who do not have a more reactive brain. And that is very, very challenging. So what do we do about it? How do we help them? We ask them and invite them to lean into the hard, to lean into the difficulties. Now, how do you do that? Well, a mom said today something I have said, and probably every parent on this, listening to this recording or attending this live, has said this or thought this, and your parents thought this about you, and you think this about sensitive children and all children. I just want them to be happy. My friends, we all want the children to be happy. When you are a highly sensitive person, you have moments of happiness and you have lots of moments that are not happy. I often tell this example. My son went to a really cool school. We got an amazing scholarship. And 2 of the activities that he got to have in this school, you will be shocked if you grew up in a traditional school or you are in a traditional school with your children right now. My son was on the mountain biking team. Hello. And his music class was rock band for the last 2 years of high school. And so when he hated school or things were so hard and he was just so depressed or so anxious, which is a natural state for a sensitive teen, let me tell you, it is that way. It is so overwhelming. I would want to say to him, dude, you're a rock band. You're on the mountain biking team. School doesn't get any better than this. And you know what happens when we do that? When we say, it's not that bad. You've done it before. I know you can do it. It's not as hard as you think it is. If you just do your best, it will be fine. When we say these things to our sensitive youth, what happens is they are not seen and heard. We deny their experience, and we never want to deny their experience. We want to teach sensitive youth, and sensitive youth, I want you to hear this. I want you to listen to your gut and your heart, your intuition, your really amazing thinking brain. Listen to it. When it's telling you that something is too hard, or that your best isn't good enough, or that you have to keep going until you have your best, listen, there's a reason you're getting that message. And you know what we need usually when that's happening? We need just to be heard. We need to be seen. So adults and parents and teachers, how do you support sensitive youth in this quandary? It's actually very simple. You say back to them their very same words. This is too hard. This feels too hard, I say to you. I hate school. You hate school. School is so hard. Maybe you say to the child, the youth, they're saying, this math set is impossible. I'm going to have to work on it until midnight, and I still will get at least half of them wrong. And you say, this math set is impossible. It feels impossible. What does impossible mean to you? And then we're going to use the Socratic method to just ask lots and lots of questions. This is something I do in my therapy work. You'll use your words and ask you more questions about it to uncover all your truths. So we want to lean into and uncover the truths of the child who feels overwhelmed, or the youth who feels like it's just impossible. What's impossible about it? Why does it feel impossible? What pieces feel possible? How might I support you? Let's break it down. let's break it down and figure out what are the little gems that feel impossible. Often that is the case. There are little pieces in the in my work with clients. I often hear highly sensitive children and youth have a hard time with oral presentations. Like, who wants to stand up in front of the class if you're a sensitive introvert? Well, if you're a high sensation seeker like me, you might be game for it. But I'll tell you, I'm willing to do it, but I'm going to have a pretty bad tummy ache and a lot of anxiety, performance anxiety leading up to it. So, how do we take that example? And instead of saying just do your best, we talk about how to break it down. My ideal, for example, for an oral presentation is simply this: let's work on it, create a brainstorm, create the list, break it down to the details of preparing and doing the research. And then we'll say practice it with a teddy bear or the dog, just one small paragraph at a time. And then maybe practice it just with the parent or a sibling who is older and kind. And then we set up a meeting between the child and or the youth and the teacher, a private meeting to go over it and talk about it. Maybe even they get to practice it one-on-one with the teacher. And then they get to practice it with the whole family. So by the time they do it in front of the class, my goodness, they've done it so many times, all that performance anxiety is gone. So yeah, we have to do hard things. I have a whole blog about hard things, actually, ElaineFriend.com/blog. And it's one of the very first ones I published. So you'll have to maybe put hard things in the search bar to find it. And in the recording of this live, I'll put it in the notes, a link to it. We do have so many hard things that we have to do. Remember, if you're a sensitive youth and your brain is more reactive, you're going to experience more things as hard than your peers. Well, what does that do to a person's self-esteem? How does that make you feel about doing your best? It's a lose-lose proposition. So let's teach sensitive youth that, in fact, things are harder. We might have to grieve and cry and scream and rage about it, and that's okay too. The thing is, a lot of stuff is easier for sensitive youth. You are going to notice the details if you have a reactive brain. You're going to have more compassion and empathy for those who are more vulnerable in the world. You are going to think about and come up with solutions that other people never even enters their mind. When you have a more reactive brain, it's designed to work that way. There's a reason that a minority of almost every species, maybe every species, even flies and fish have been found to have this reactive brain. There is a reason. We need some deep thinkers out there. We need them to be able to solve the problems. But at the same time, and at the same time, we need to help sensitive youth design a life compatible with having a different brain. So it starts with wearing that different brain with understanding and pride. And then it also furthers, not starts, because I already started, it goes further with understanding that our brain is different than everybody else's brain, and that is okay. It's so important that we help sensitive youth feel different, but just as good. It's so hard to be different. It's not something that we particularly want to have in the world, especially as youth, tweens, teens, and young adults. You know, there comes a point in adolescence when most people are ready to. I know I had a little button that said, "Why be normal?" And I wore it with pride on my jacket from about 17 through 30, probably. And there is a period of time when being different feels great, but it's not normal human instinct. That's just about breaking away and becoming an adult. So, and our sensitive youth are less likely to get there as long as we're telling them to do their best. So let's keep inviting sensitive youth to tackle the hard things, to break them down into pieces that work for them, to talk about all the different parts that are challenging, and to understand that there are things that are so much easier for us. There are. We're easier at we have an easier time of getting in touch with our feelings. We're better at thinking about all the very little details. One more piece I'm going to add before I jump off of this is it's really important to train sensitive youth and for parents to also advocate to be able to talk to their school, their coaches, to really explain how their brain works differently. So something beautiful that happened with my son in high school was that he finally found a teacher who was able to hear it. And you know what this teacher did for him? He said, you know what, you can do every other problem in math because you're going to be taking 5 times as long to be to solve the problem, to do the homework. You show more work than anyone else. I honor the level of detail and time that you put into this problem set, and I'll support you and help you. And I'll tell you which ones I think it's really important that you do. Because look, we don't really need sensitive reactive brains don't really need as much repetition as regular brains do. That's the good news, right? So creating a situation and designing a life compatible with a reactive brain is going to help a sensitive youth understand that if they even just do 20%, it's probably equal to some of their peers' best, as long as they're applying their brain. And when they hit something that they just don't want to do, let's use a Socratic method, really teach them to question themselves, break it down into the small bits and find out where is that sticking point that they have started to feel less than about. When we help them understand that their brains are extremely powerful. Teachers love sensitive kids. Once they learn to understand what's going on in their brains and why they are responding in the way they are, you know, a big problem with sensitive adolescents often is to get them to write less on on essays and papers, because they're thinking so much that they can go meandering down all these different places. So you have a different challenge, and it's almost paradoxical. What sensitive youth need to hear is often the opposite of what it's your instinct to say to them. So look into that. Lean into the problems, be curious, teach them to honor when they're feeling challenged or they're feeling less than. Let's honor it and dig it out and find out what that's all about. Help them feel seen and heard by repeating their words and their feelings back to them with incredible, heartfelt, open, soft-chested compassion. And then cut that phrase out of your vocabulary, just do your best. It's not important for a sensitive child. All we want them to do is just do. And we want them to be. We don't need best from them, because when your brain is that thinking and noticing and feeling, best is unattainable, because you can imagine what the best is.